Welcome into another episode of We're Not Doing a Podcast. Mark Weber here with Jarrett Least. Jarrett is coming back after an off week last time around due to food poisoning. Jarrett, is your tummy feeling any better?
The tummy's feeling a lot better. It was more of a 24-hour virus. It wasn't really food poisoning. Initially, I kind of thought it was, but it was just a 24-hour scare where I basically slept the whole day, kind of had chills in my legs for a little bit. So it was definitely not a fun day, but back, recovered, ready to do another podcast episode with you, Mark. It looks like you're in a new spot. Looks like you're in a different location. Where are you?
I am in a new apartment, so it's pretty exciting right there. Everything is still not completely unpacked yet, so kind of hiding in a corner. Now, enough about.
You look like you're sitting in a king's chair. You look like you're sitting in a king's throne.
No. I wish. All right. So that being said, lots of changes as we talked about. Few things we missed over the past 2 weeks since we last recorded. But one thing has remained the same, and that is that the New York Giants have been really, really struggling with only one win so far through 5 weeks into the NFL season. You have Daniel Jones, whose status is up in the air for this upcoming week matchup. At this point, given the start and Daniel Jones's injury, should the Giants just focus on losing so they get CalebWilliams, and should the fan base really have that to look forward to for the rest of the season?
Well, it's two different questions. When it comes to the players, it's so early still in the season to really be thinking about tanking. The Giants have played 5 games. You're 1-4. Clearly, they look like one of the worst teams in the NFL, and it looks very likely that they're on their way to having a top 5 pick in the 2024 draft. But from a players and coaches standpoint, it's too early to start thinking about tanking. But we're not players. We're not coaches. We're fans. And from a fan's perspective, the Giants absolutely should be thinking about tanking from a fan's perspective, because I've been trying to say for quite a while, I just never thought Daniel Jones was all that special. He's an average at best.
Even though you thought he was a top 15 quarterback in the NFL, which is average, but that's still better than what a lot of teams have.
At the end of the day, where does average really get you? If the Giants have an opportunity to go 2-15, 3-14, and they have the number 1 or number 2 pick in the NFL draft, are you really going to pass up on CalebWilliams or Drake May? There's no way you can do that. So when you look at it in that regard, this upcoming draft is a really strong quarterback class. And if you have a top 3 pick, preferably top 2, because I think it's pretty likely both CalebWilliams and Drake May are going to go 1 and 2, you would have to take one of those 2 guys. We've seen what Daniel Jones is at this point, and as you just said, he's average. And if you have an opportunity to get a potential superstar in one of those 2, you have to do it. And I really think Daniel Jones, he doesn't, it's interesting to me when it comes to Daniel Jones, Mark. I feel like he doesn't always get the proper blame that he deserves. I understand everyone wants to say the offensive line is one of the worst in NFL history, which it very well may be, but Daniel Jones isn't good. He's just not good. He won a playoff game last year, which is great. Tim Tebow won a playoff game. Rex Grossman took the Chicago Bears to a Super Bowl appearance. Nick Foles won a Super Bowl. If you have an opportunity to tank and get one of those top 2 quarterbacks, you got to do it. It's an opportunity that doesn't present itself all that often. So I would definitely think about it from the fan's perspective.
So it goes through a lot of different ways for the Giants. the players will never abide by tanking because they're playing for their jobs and they don't care what next year's team looks like at all because they may not be on the team next year. The coaches are fighting for their livelihood. It is very difficult to move on to another team or to stay at your job if there's not a lot of success. So they need to succeed. The Giants executives, on the other hand, they have to be focusing on putting themselves in that position to either get the number one pick or trade for the number one pick, gathering up assets and thinking of a plan to get Caleb Williams. I know you mentioned Drake May. There's been a lot of hype, but Caleb Williams is that special. In my opinion, this isn't a quarterback 1 and 2 type draft because Caleb Williams is that fantastic of a quarterback. We have not seen a quarterback with as much hype as Caleb Williams for all the right reasons since Andrew Luck. And Caleb Williams at this point is better than Andrew Luck. Andrew Luck had a 3-to-1 touchdown interception ratio. Caleb Williams has 20. And if you're pointing to Joe Burrow, 10-to-1. Caleb Williams could potentially be not just the best quarterback prospect since Andrew Luck, but possibly ever.
I knew you were going there.
Generational talent of a quarterback. So for the Giants, it's either for the executives, and this goes for how the fan base should look at the rest of the season, you have to get yourself in the position to get Caleb Williams, whether it's a trade or by losing every game for the rest of the season. And if you're a Giants fan, you have to be hoping that it's easier if they could just lose every single game moving forward.
Well, that's the thing. When you mention a trade, if whoever has the number one pick, they're drafting Caleb Williams. So a trade is not going to be likely. But look, when you go in regards to best quarterback prospect ever, he's a very good prospect, but we always see every 2-3 years, oh, this quarterback's one of the best quarterback prospects.
Who's better than Caleb Williams? Who has had better numbers than him, and who has had this level of hype than Caleb Williams?
Look, yeah, I mean, numbers are all well and good, but when it comes to the college game, I always say, and I say it to you when we're not doing the podcast, Mark, college quarterbacks, they're always going to put up great numbers because at programs like USC or at Oklahoma or Ohio State, you have the best offensive lines in the country. You have some of the best receivers.
Yeah, but he's putting up numbers that are better than what anyone else has had at any of those great programs. Matt Leinart never had the numbers that Caleb Williams had at USC. Carson Palmer never had the numbers that Caleb Williams had at USC. Even guys at Alabama, where you're playing with NFL wide receivers. Quarterbacks at LSU, where you're playing with NFL wide receivers and NFL offensive linemen. They've never had the numbers that Caleb Williams had. Caleb Williams may be better than all of them. I mean, comparing him to Andrew Luck may be unfair to Caleb Williams. He is that talented.
Oh, come on. Well, we'll see. But that's the thing also when it comes to these college prospects. You could go by the numbers all you want, but they're playing behind great offensive lines where they have literally all day to throw the football. They could go through their first read, their second read, their third read, their fourth read, and then still find a wide open wide receiver who probably happens to be some of the best.
Yeah, but he's doing it better than what anyone else has done before. It's not just looking at his numbers and saying, oh, they're great. No one has had the season that Caleb Williams has had this year with the Trojans.
Yeah, I mean, he's having a great season, but it's not going to be a situation where if, let's say, he does go to the New York Giants next year, he's going to be behind, in all likelihood, a very similar offensive line. They're not going to have a complete overhaul of their offensive line in one off season. Now, them missing Andrew Thomas is a huge deal. But look, when it comes to losing games, they should when it comes to getting the opportunity to draft Caleb Williams. But let's just wait and see what Caleb Williams looks like as a rookie, because in all likelihood, he's not going to a great situation. Probably going to be going to play behind a bad offensive line and not as many great weapons. I think Caleb Williams is going to be a very good NFL player, and I think he'll be better than Daniel Jones. So for the purpose of this argument, yes, the Giants absolutely should continue to lose games and try to potentially move on from Daniel Jones. But the other thing also why this could benefit the Giants, Mark, is let's say you draft Caleb Williams. You can then move on from Daniel Jones's contract after 2 years. So I wouldn't necessarily play Caleb Williams as a rookie if he goes to the Giants. You still give Daniel Jones the majority of the games in Caleb Williams' rookie year. And if he starts to not do much, which I would expect, we're already getting way ahead of ourselves, then you move to Caleb Williams. I think that would be the best situation moving forward for the Giants. But we still got a long ways to go in this upcoming NFL season. We're only 5 games into a 17-game season. A lot of things can happen and change over the course of the coming weeks of the year.
All right, Jared, you mentioned the importance of the offensive line in the NFL. The Jets are really going to learn how important it is to have a strong offensive line. Elijah Vera-Tucker is now out for the season after 5 games. If it feels like deja vu all over again, he also is out after only 7 games last season. That is 12 games in the past 2 seasons after playing all 16 in his rookie year. Who has been the more disappointing Jet out of the 2021 NFL draft? Elijah Vera-Tucker or Zach Wilson?
Well, I think the answer to that question is pretty easy because it sucks that AVT is injury prone. Hate to say it, through 3 years in the NFL.
No, he is. He's injury prone, Jared.
But
12 games in 2 seasons is injury prone.
But he's a great player. Zach Wilson sucks. So to answer the question, Zach Wilson's been the bigger disappointment. He's the number 2 pick in the draft, and the Jets moved on from Sam Darnold. Not that I think Sam Darnold is any good, but you moved on from Sam Darnold to draft Zach Wilson, number 2 overall. And yes, these past 2 weeks, Zach Wilson has shown a little sign of progress. I'm not all the way there and thinking he's turned a corner, but through 3 seasons in the NFL, Zach Wilson's been one of the worst quarterbacks in NFL history. So to answer the question of disappointment, it's clearly Zach Wilson. We'll be talking about Zach Wilson in years to come with the likes of Jamarcus Russell and Ryan Leaf. It sucks for AVT. You feel bad for him. Unfortunately, these 2 injuries have happened in Denver. And by the way, if the Jets have to play in Denver for another consecutive year, I'm going to lose my mind. They don't play in the AFC West. 3 years in a row, Mark, the Jets have played in Denver. Why is that?
It's ridiculous. There's also a humongous injury that happens when they play the Denver Broncos in general, because last year you have Breece Hall, who was out for the season after that game. And wasn't AVT also injured after that game against the Broncos last year?
Yeah,
too?
It was two years in a row. AVT got hurt.
Don't schedule the Broncos anymore, whether it's home or whether it's away. Do not schedule the Denver Broncos.
It's the NFL
for the Jets.
The NFL
for the sake of the Jets, do not let it happen.
Well, that's the thing. That's another topic of conversation we can have, Mark, how the NFL absolutely hates the Jets. The officials are a joke, and it blows my mind. Do you agree with me that the officiating is absolutely ridiculous, especially this season? It's out of control.
No, I don't really focus on that. I mean, letting a third and 22 against Pat Mahomes was pretty bad to begin with. Real quick, I'm going to go with AVT being the bigger disappointment over Zach Wilson for one reason only. When it comes to offensive linemen and their success, one of the biggest factors is how many games they play. And if AVT is not able to play and be on the field, he's useless. Zach Wilson, as you've mentioned, has been one of the worst quarterbacks picked within the top 2 picks in NFL history. But maybe it's recency bias, but Wilson really is looking like he has come around the corner. He outplayed Pat Mahomes. He got a win over Denver in back-to-back weeks. I mean, he looks like he is getting better, and the Jets weren't in a situation where they were comfortable with getting rid of him for nothing. So I think Wilson turning around this quarter and being able to start games for the New York Jets gives me more confidence in him over AVT at the moment. Now, we talked a lot about the Jets, and I know Jarrett was talking about their scheduling and their officiating. One thing that we are really going to get sick and tired of, if we aren't sick and tired of it already, is the freaking tush push. All week, we've been hearing about the tush push as the Jets face the Eagles this upcoming weekend. There's many articles about it. Jared, are you already sick of hearing about the tush push going into this game?
Not really. I think why people are so up in arms about it is because the Eagles are the only team who can really execute it perfectly. And you can't get on a team if they execute a play to perfection, which is what the Eagles do. You see so many other teams trying to do it, and it doesn't work. Guys end up getting hurt. So I'm not sick of it. Credit to the Eagles. They're one of the best teams in the NFL. They'll probably, in all likelihood, beat the Jets on Sunday. But I'm not sick of the tush push. It's basically a glorified word for the QB sneak. But
also we saw it in 2005 with the Bush push. It had a different name, and then it just switches once the Eagles do it. And there's so many more other stories about this Eagles-Jets game, whether it's Alijah Vera-Tucker, as we mentioned, Aaron Rodgers still not playing, the start that the Eagles have been having after coming up for a Super Bowl, which never happens in the NFL. But it's this freaking tush push that everyone's talking about it because it has a catchy name. Tush push, tush push, tush push. It's all we're going to be freaking hearing about during this Eagles-Jets game when there are many more important storylines to talk about.
What are you more sick of, the tush push or Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift?
I'm more sick of the tush push. Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift, it's interesting. You want to see where it's going. Tush push with an 81% success rate according to ESPN stats and info. We've seen it before. It's nothing that creative. Like you said, it's a glorified QB sneak.
Yeah, it was.
We saw it with USC in 2005 as a new name, Jalen Hurts. There's so much more that should be talked about when it comes to Philadelphia Eagles season this year. But the tush push is taking over their 5-0 start.
Well, that's the thing about the Eagles. It's a storyline where I feel like they're trying to make the Eagles more of a villain than they already are because they have one of the best rosters in the NFL. And I'll just say, if you're able to do something well, I'm not going to get sick of it. I think people are saying they're sick of it is because they know how to do it to perfection. And it is a little bit different.
Is 81% really perfection? 81% it works every time.
It's yeah, I guess it's true. But you know what? They do it very well. They do it better than any other team in the league. And that's because they have a great offensive line. And I think people become sick of it because of how good the Eagles are. They can't get sick of the fact that the Eagles know how to do a play really well. If you're getting, you know what, the way people will stop talking about it, Mark, is if you stop them more and more. They've executed well 81% of the time. If that percentage goes down, guess what? We won't be talking about the tush push anymore. And that's why I say I'll be more sick of Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift because we'll never stop talking about Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift. If the tush push percentage goes down, we'll eventually stop talking about it. So tush push, keep doing it until someone stops it.
All right. And one thing that is continuously talked about because it will never get fixed are the problems with the New York Yankees. Hal Steinbrenner, at a public appearance with Sportico, said that the Yankees are looking to make subtle changes to the franchise after an audit of their analytics department. Should there be any confidence towards these subtle changes actually making an impact on the Yankees moving forward?
Absolutely not. When you're auditing your organization, looking into what's going wrong with the analytic department, doesn't that mean the people who are in the department and the people who are running baseball operations are part of the problem? Am I missing something?
No, and I mean, there's a lot to point to this organization, and one of them should be the Hal. Hey, spend more money. or look at this team better. I don't think it's an analytics problem.
Well, that's the thing. It's two different reasons to be angry when it comes to the Yankees not spending enough money. Okay, look, when it comes to free agency, you can get on the Yankees for not going the extra mile to bring in the top free agents over the past several years. But the deep-seated issue with this organization right now is the fact that they just don't develop enough good prospects from their farm system. That's why over the years, they've just been a stagnant organization. They missed the playoffs this year. I think that's more of a one-off. I think they'll find a way to be back in the playoffs next year. But it's the same story with them. They're going to lose, in all likelihood, to the Houston Astros at some point in the playoffs next year, if they make it. So it's really from within that they need to fix. And if you're not going to make changes to the head of the baseball operations, to Brian Cashman, you're just going in a circle. Audit all you want. You're not changing the people. I mean, what are the Yankees going to do? Change the brains of the same.
Well, there's one thing they should do, and that's someone to tell Hal Steinbrenner to sell the team, because this is not for him anymore. Brian Cashman was able to build a successful franchise for quite some time, for most of his tenure as a New York Yankee. It all changed when George passed away and Hal took over. The franchise became extremely stagnant, never went over the hump, and there's just no confidence, and that's why they're coming off their worst season since 1992. Jarrett, their worst season in 30 years, 3 decades. It is insane. Someone should tell Hal, hey, you are not your father. This is not for you. That would be the most helpful thing there is right now, because Brian Cashman is handcuffed at behest of Hal, and Aaron Boone is handcuffed at behest of Brian Cashman. So what is there to do other than change course of ownership?
Well, you could scream about that.
Problem is, he's paying the auditors, so it's never going to be fixed.
But Mark, I always like to use this analogy. You're going to tell you're going to tell Hal Steinbrenner to sell the team. He owns the New York Yankees. You could look at it from this perspective. Mark, let's say you come over to my apartment, and I'm keeping my apartment a little bit dirty, and it's not really put together very nicely. You're going to tell me to sell my apartment? You know, people will tell Hal Steinbrenner to go fuck off. At the end of the day, he owns the team. He'll sell it if he wants to sell it. So I get your frustration. I totally do. I'm a Met fan. I wanted the Wilpons to sell the team more than anything in the world. I got my wish, but you can wish all you want. Say it again.
And how has that worked out? How has your wish worked out so far?
It's 3 years. It's been better than the Wilpons. It's been better than the Wilpons. Look, you can wish all you want for Hal Steinbrenner to sell the team, but what people should be screaming at with Hal Steinbrenner, if he still is going to own the team, which he will, is to change the head of baseball operations and move on for Brian Cashman. Look, he should have done it this year. If they miss the playoffs again next year, you have no choice. You just have no choice. Ultimately, Hal Steinbrenner has to decide he's going to drive the car and not sit shotgun. He's basically let Brian Cashman run his organization since he's taken over for his father, George. And at some point, Hal Steinbrenner's got to put his big boy pants on and say, this is my team, and I'm making changes. And until he makes legitimate changes to the people in charge, nothing's going to change. No audit, nothing. So a lot needs to change with the Yankees. We could go in a circle all we want with them, but it's unfortunate. There's part of me that does feel a little bad for you, Mark. Part of me that does feel a little bad for you, because I know how much you love that team. They're the only, you said to me when we first met, the only constant in life that makes me happy is the New York Yankees, and now they've ruined it for you. So I do feel bad for you to an extent, even with that smug face.
Well, I've grown up a little bit since then. One person that did have the net worth to buy the Yankees at one point, Sam Bankman-Fried. He is now on trial, facing 100 years plus in prison. Jared, you know what time it is. It's our favorite segment. With it or not with it, the Sam Bankman-Fried trial.
I feel like at this point, once he got busted, it was with it back then when he got arrested. I just feel like at this point now, not really. I'm not into it. I could understand why people would say it's with it because there probably seems to be some crazy different story about the crazy sex orgies that he has in the Bahamas and all that fun stuff. So I could understand from most people's perspective why I would be with it, but it's really not something that I'm following of, even though I'm thinking selfishly. So you know what? I'll think in terms of the overall people. Sure, it's with it. I'll let you delve into the SBF trial a whole lot more because I know you are dying to talk about this.
So I'll say this for the SBF trial. It is not with it because, as you mentioned, Jarrett, no one is talking about it really.
Yeah.
There's a lot of other things, and it kind of has taken a backseat to the news. And like you said, once the initial details came out, people stopped really caring as much. And we know he's going to prison for a long time at this point. It will be with it again when the inevitable movie comes out, whether it be a documentary or a feature film. However, this trial is fascinating. Jarrett, I know you said before that the one constant smile has been because of the Yankees, but I'll tell you this. My morning, every time, are great for three reasons. Waking up next to my wife, having a nice cup of coffee, and reading about the SBF trial every morning. It is constant entertainment. You have everybody who is his close friends and who work for him just saying, yep, he did it. Everything that you're mentioning, he did. He was using one company to fund the other. It is very obvious. This was an old-fashioned Ponzi scheme. You have lawyers complaining that the people are on the stand are too fidgety. They're not paying attention. You have Sam Bankman-Fried's haircut. You have Carolyn Ellison, the CEO, wearing jackets that are worth $2,000. You have the guy that doesn't speak, throwing everybody under the bus. This trial every day is just a gift. It's the funniest thing ever. These kids had no idea how to run a business. They painted themselves as these altruistic people when really they were just a bunch of jerks. That's the best way to put it. And let me tell you the one thing that we have learned from the SBF trial, and I'll say this. Be nice to every single person when you're growing up. Because one of these days, if that person is very smart and is picked on, they will take all their anger out and create a massive Ponzi scheme and steal billions of dollars from people, go to jail and embarrass themselves. So if you remember some person that was always sitting at the corner of the cafeteria like Steven Glansberg, reach out to him. Ask how he's doing. Because that person could potentially ruin the world if they're smart enough.
The only thing that I'm literally thinking of right now that you just mentioned that, is the scene from Billy Madison where Billy calls the guy people to kill. And he calls him saying, sorry, I was mean to you in high school. And then he wipes his name off the list. It's a classic. That's another classic.
Man, I'm glad I called that guy.
Exactly. That's the only thing I'm thinking about. It shows where my mind wanders to obscure places. But I have a question for you. So with all this SBF trial, I know you just finished reading the Elon Musk book. Who do you feel is a more interesting person, Elon Musk or SBF?
It's got to be Elon Musk. Elon Musk is just completely all over the place. And one of my favorite stories from the Elon Musk book is connected to Sam Bankman-Fried, actually. So Elon Musk's banker reached out to him saying, you should talk to this guy, SBF. He could put some money into the Twitter acquisition. And Elon, instead of being like a normal human being and responding or saying no, he just double tapped with the thumbs down on his iPhone. Is that not the greatest thing? Hey, this guy wants to give you billions of dollars for your business. Thumbs down. Elon Musk is significantly more fascinating. We'll be talking about him in a lot more positive light going forward than Bankman-Fried for hundreds of years.
Oh, Elon Musk, he's the modern day Einstein. I mean, everything about Elon Musk is 10 times more.
I'll top that. He's a modern day Da Vinci because he's doing rocket ships, electric cars, social media. He's a man of many trades. He's not someone you'd ever want to work for, but he's someone you definitely would love to bring to dinner. I think that's the best way to describe Elon Musk. Never someone you'd want to work for or with. Have a dinner conversation. You'll learn so much about every topic in the world.
Oh,
and
yeah.
He can probably learn from you because he loves to learn. Sam Bankman-Fried, on the other hand, would sit in English class or film class and say, none of this matters. The only reason why you're pointing out all these things is so you still have a job. And that's from his book with Michael Lewis that just came out. He's a jerk.
Oh, yeah.
He sucks.
And he's friends with Tom Brady. So you don't want to be hanging out with him because you're the biggest fan of Tom Brady. But yeah, Elon Musk, 100%, he's so much more interesting. The thing that I just love about Elon Musk is he'll have kids, and then after a month, he'll decide he wants to change the name. He's like, I don't like that name. Let's change the name.
Well, he'll have kids with one woman and then donate sperm to another woman. So that was the interesting part of the book. Spoiler alert. How far are you into the book?
I'm 40 pages into the book. I got
excellent. And there's how many pages in that book?
Like 600 plus.
All right. On that note, Jared, I'm going to give you some time so you can finish up the Elon Musk book by Walter
maybe in 5 years.
For Jarrett Lease, I am Mark Weber. We're not doing a podcast. Hopefully, Jarrett does not have food poisoning in the near future. And good luck for everyone this weekend as the Giants and the Jets have big weekends moving forward.